I'm not supposed to be here right now. By every statistic, by every expectation, my past should have led to a very different life. Consider this. Only 0.8% of children who have spent time in foster care ever go on to earn a graduate-level education. And only 15% of people who attempt to quit drinking make it through their first year. And only 1.9% of women founders ever exceed $1 million in revenue. In fact, the odds of one person overcoming all of these challenges, 0.002%. And yet, here I am. Thank you. Many things helped get me where I am today, but one thing stands out. Someone once refused to put me in a box, and that changed everything. We do this all the time, don't we? We label people. We categorize them. We take one look at someone's past and decide what's possible for their future. We say things like, people don't change. She's not the right fit. That's just the way the world works. We box people in, not always on purpose, but because it feels easier, safer. The problem? By doing so, we limit what's possible. Now, I grew up in a home where my father battled addiction. Some of my earliest memories are marked by instability and fear. At the age of 8, I was diagnosed with ADHD during a time where ADHD was barely understood in girls. School was really, really hard for me. My teachers and peers told me often that I was too loud, too bossy, too disruptive. And no matter how hard I tried to shrink myself to fit in, the world told me I was too much. By the age of 15, I was on my own, bouncing between youth shelters and group homes. I had tried to accept the life that I had been dealt, a life that was good enough for someone like me. I'd become exactly what society expected of me, a high school dropout with no real path forward. The world had boxed me in. Now, I used to believe that our past defined us, that where we started dictated where we would end up. But I came across something once that stopped me in my tracks. It said, it may not be your fault what happened to you, but it is your responsibility to take those traumas and make a life out of them. My past was not my fault, but rewriting the narrative of my future was my responsibility, and so I owned it. Now picture this. I'm standing in the middle of Pearson Airport. I had just landed from my honeymoon. All aircraft had been grounded due to a storm. It was absolute chaos. Hundreds of exhausted travelers, no direction. Now, I worked for an airline at the time, but I'd never worked inside of an airport before. Still, I couldn't just stand there. So I ran up to the employees and asked how I could help. When no one had an answer for me, I did something bold. I grabbed a megaphone, I climbed onto a counter, and I yelled, "Okay, everyone, we're gonna form 3 lines here." And just like that, I took control. I corralled over 400 frustrated travelers, 3 clean lines. And for the next 2 hours, I helped move people through. My husband was very irritated and annoyed. We got the travelers processed, and chaos turned into efficiency. The next morning, I woke up to a post on an internal company site. Someone was looking for the woman who had taken charge in the airport. One of my colleagues responded, "Based on what you just described, I'd say that was April Hicke." Now, fast forward a few years, and I'm signing an offer letter at one of the world's largest consulting firms. I had just landed a job that I had no traditional qualifications for. And do you know what sealed the deal? Not my resume, not my education, definitely not my corporate experience. It was the airport story. The hiring manager told me later, "We knew we needed to hire the crazy yelling airport lady." She could have looked at my past, saw high school dropout, no university degree, and written me off. But instead, she saw something that many hiring managers do not. She saw passion, resourcefulness, a drive to figure things out. She saw past the bullet points of my resume and chose to be inspired by my outside-of-the-box approach. That same energy, curiosity, boldness, traits that once got me in trouble in school, just landed me my dream job. A job that changed the course of my life. When we box people in, we limit their potential. And this goes far beyond hiring. Think about it. How often do we label somebody before we truly know them? The loud kid at school, the introvert who's overlooked for leadership, the colleague who doesn't fit the normal mold. We write people off before we give them a chance. But here's the thing. Our differences are not weaknesses, they are fuel. And when we can embrace different perspectives, we can drive innovation, creativity, and progress. In education, when we only value standardized testing, we miss out on the creative minds who think differently. And in business, when we hire the same type of person over and over again, we miss out on new ideas and fresh ways to solve problems. And in life, when we make snap judgments about others, we miss out on deep and meaningful connections. Predictability might feel safe, but the safe choice limits possibility. Now, I started my journey with a 0.002% chance of standing where I am today. But statistics are merely a measure of predictability. They indicate the most likely outcome. My past was not my fault, but rewriting the narrative of my future was my responsibility. The instability of my adolescence led to me not being able to finish high school. But I went back to university as an adult and graduated from right here at Royal Roads in a master's program with an A average. Thank you. Growing up around addictions and abuse felt that it was pulling me along that same path, but this past year in February, I celebrated 10 years of continuous sobriety. And life felt that it was telling me who I was, what I was capable of, and where I belonged. But I worked my way up from entry-level jobs to become a corporate director, to eventually co-found a company that is literally built on the idea that we stop putting people in boxes. Not because I conformed, not because I fit into the world's expectations, but because I refuse to be boxed in. So now I ask you, where can you rewrite your narrative? Where have you been limiting yourself because of a label someone once gave you? Where have you put someone in a box? And what would happen if you started to see potential instead of limitations? I challenge us all to think differently about this, because the world needs people who are different, people who are bold, and people who don't fit the mold. And if you feel you've been put into a box, the best thing you can do is grab a megaphone, climb onto a counter, and simply take the lead. Thank you.